Tonight, I thought I would tell you a little bit of a story, life story. Actually, a few life stories. I was going to talk about my terrible time when I worked at NASA and what a ridiculously BS driven place that was. Took me years to forget about it. But while I was researching it, I came across some tidbits. I realized there's too many stories, and one story really got my attention, a story that I go back to every few years and I look at. Um, when I worked at JPL, JPL is the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, a branch of NASA that's in the mountains of Pasadena, Altadena, and it's built in the mountain, and it's really evolved out of one or two buildings, and they just added buildings here and there and there. And when I went there back in early 2000, uh, we didn't even have parking. I've heard that it's gotten better. They didn't have enough parking structures, so you had to park way outside, like a mile or two outside the laboratory, and take a shuttle to these buildings, or you had to walk over. And a lot of times we would give up and just walk and forget about the shuttle. And because these buildings were all just added, piled up here, there, up and down the mountain and hillside and so forth, and they used to have open houses, so people would go there, would get a glimpse of how badly these buildings were set up and how terrible the pavement was. And a lot of times we really had to go up and down the actual dirt and mountain and hillside to get from one building to another, to make a shortcut, or just the pavements, because each building was added. The pavement, the cement blocks, everything was up and down, done in the shoddiest way possible. Everything and JPL is one of the better branches of NASA. NASA, Ames, and JPL are the better parts. The other ones are really bad. And I would always laugh and say people think NASA is so high tech and so forth. Meanwhile, everything about it. I remember it took me like a month or two to just get a computer and set up a computer account. There was so much bureaucracy and so much garbage, and you had to buy this, you had to buy that. They didn't have a nice streamlined way of you even setting up a computer account. You had to buy memory. You had to buy some kind of account space. Then you had to set up an account. You had to call so many different places, go through so much rigmarole. The office that I got into was filled with uh, tons of old books and computer manuals that were outdated. I actually had to carve out an area this big, move it myself, because otherwise I would have to 2 months for them to get their wheels rolling and to get workers to move all these books out for me to have some space. It would have taken 2 months. So I actually got a dolly, got a bunch of carts, and started shuttling. We're talking a room full of manuals and books that were like really past old computer manuals and so forth that were like obsolete. Just carved some space for myself to sit down and have a table. It was so bureaucratic and it was so garbage, and there was so much BS going on. And I knew about the BS because I actually thought I would go there for a few years just to learn how to write BS proposals, because one of our very successful professors had gone there for 2 years and he was amazing at writing proposals and getting money. This guy, if you quizzed him on high school math and physics, he would fail, but he was amazing at international reputation because he could hire the right people to do the right thing. It doesn't matter, you could be a big name in science and not be an idiot, not be able to pass a college entrance exam, as long as you hire the right people. Anyway, so when as I would have to walk every day back and forth from the parking lot, if these buildings are here, I would have to be like way off and walk over for like 10, 15 minutes. All these engineers who were getting paid between $50 to $100 an hour they were spending their time walking back and forth in the morning, literally spending half an hour. By the time you got to your workplace, you were kind of sweaty. I would always say, especially in the evenings when it would get dark earlier in winter, I would say to myself, my gosh, if the pavement was this bad in the city of Los Angeles or in somebody's home, they would be sued so badly because so many people would be tripping off. And because of the hillside, right, the path that we had to take was on a hillside. So if you tripped over, I would have to pay so much attention not to trip. Because sometimes if you tripped over, you would go down the hillside too. You would fall like 30 feet or something. You could totally hurt yourself. And I would constantly say to myself, oh my gosh, I don't know how these people don't get sued. I don't know how they go on with such crappy, bad cement. Every 10 feet, 20 feet is a different cement block, up, down, mosaic, this, that. And one day, we got an email regarding this person that I knew from Caltech, this man my age, Chuck Witham, Charles Chuck Witham. And the moment I saw his name, I remembered years back at school when it was Earth Day, and I got out of my department. You would think in any university for Earth Day there would be tons of tables and people talking about Earth Day. No, there was a single table in the middle of campus, and there was this young man sitting there. I walked to him and I said, "Wow, of all the people, nobody cared." And at our school, nobody cared about the environment. In fact, the cafeteria was converting to more and more disposable trash making things. And people didn't seem to mind at all. They were constantly buying and trashing and buying and trashing. In the 90s, I couldn't believe how people didn't care about the environment back. I was the only one who would take paper, recycled paper, from the copy room and use it for my exams and homework and so forth. There was this one man, Chuck, was sitting at this table on campus in our college. And I talked to him, and he was in material science, and he started telling me about the materials he's trying to develop to make better batteries because they're going to reduce our reliance on the oil industry. It's going to be more solar, and the battery power is a huge restricting bottleneck for technologies. And with better batteries, we're going to have that. Actually, something that we see today. Now, all of a sudden, you have uh, electric cars that actually have some power, like the Tesla motors and so forth. You see vacuum cleaners, you see all kinds of things. Drones, they have enough power to pick things up. We have learned batteries have gotten a lot better. And I was impressed. And it wasn't really until last night when I looked them up. I think the guy had over 20 publications, co-authored or authored over 27 publications. We can see it now on batteries, and he had, that caused 3 patents. Okay, I don't know if this picture, the parking lot was way yonder. So I was at JPL when I got this email one night that Dr. Chuck Witham had had an accident on one of these roads while bicycling at JPL. And by early dawn or something, he was announced brain dead. I mean, the moment I saw that, I mean, this guy wasn't necessarily my classmate, wasn't my buddy or anything. Someone that I had met once, and I cared for the fact that he cared for the planet. That, I had found somebody like myself who actually cared in that desert of lack of care. He had had an accident, and after a few hours at local hospital, they had pronounced him brain dead, and that was it. They said they don't know the cause of the accident, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? It's obvious what the cause of the accident was. It was these crappy roads." Uh, So they said, we don't know. After a day, they said, because we would get emails, we think he might have hit a deer. I was like, are you kidding me? He didn't hit like a railing. He didn't hit the cement block. He didn't hit any of your garbage. Of all the things, you had to cook up something that has nothing to. It's out of your administrative blah blah. You guys didn't make a mistake. He had an accident with the deer. And then a week later, pretty much they said, yeah, we believe it was an accident with a deer. We didn't find a deer or anything, but we believe that a deer probably appeared suddenly in front of him and he hit a deer and then he died. That's it. They didn't say that he fell off something or what did he hit, exactly where did they find him, none of that. That we think, yeah, and we need to coexist with deer. They blamed it on a deer. I was like, if this is not a joke, if this is not ridiculous, I don't know what to say. I always felt like I should contact his family. In fact, by mistake, for the longest time, by mistake, I thought he was related to Professor Witham, linear nonlinear, the author of the famous book Linear Nonlinear Wave. No, it's a different spelling, it's a different person. I think this kid was from Iowa. His family had relocated, parents had separated, had a sister. Mom was survived by his mom, his grandma, his dad. Mom and dad lived in two different places. And then they set up a environmental stewardship award in his name that I cannot. A few years ago I could find it. Now I don't even find it. It was not money or anything. It was just a stupid certificate, a piece of paper they would honor, give to annually to someone who was honored as like someone who cared for the environment or something. Weissman, I think I remember this guy. I don't know. Is he the shyster that I thought? Witham, Charles Witham, Ph.D., born August 20th, 1968. JPL research scientist, bicycle and environmental activist. Memorial service will be held today. And I guess that was his home. There's an email I found of his in his time at Caltech. Here is the JPL newspaper, and that's his photo. Charles Chuck Witham, his master's and PhD in material science at Caltech. 3 patents, 26 publications. That's pretty impressive for someone just getting a graduate degree coming out of a PhD program to have that many publications. You're lucky if you have 5, 6, 7. Fuel cell team. What's interesting is that who takes advantage of these patents and so forth? At the end, you have people like Elon Musk, someone who doesn't have much of an education. People hail him as a genius. The guy would not know basic, like sophomore level math if you asked him, quizzed him. This Elon Musk is good at hiring. I always say he's good at hiring the right people to hire the right people to hire the right people. Which, if you're a member of a country club, they know these things. You don't have to know anything. You just hire the right people to do everything. This guy made all his money. Elon Musk made all his money out of the charges you were paying on PayPal and keeping your money in their escrow accounts and using them for investment. Every time you did a PayPal transaction, the money would be sitting there for weeks unless you would transfer it. Made so much money out of this stuff. It's deplorable that people like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or Elon Musk are hailed as geniuses, as people who are changing our lives. That's like a joke. The operating system on a Microsoft or the Apple system, they're horrible. They're a disaster. These people have made so much money, have made stashes of cash off people like this, and we hailed them as geniuses. Avid cyclists and as a member of the Caltech Environmental Task Force, they organized computer recycling, Earth Day fairs. Yeah, he was the only one. There was nobody else. He's survived by his sister, Nita-Lyn Roth of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, his mother, Linda, his father, Charles, in New Jersey. So parents were not in the same state, possibly separated. I don't know. And even a grandma. Okay, so I looked up the sister. And for years, every few years, I would go back and look up, and I would ask myself, maybe I should contact his parents. Maybe I should contact his family to talk about it. But if you just feel like, who am I? I don't have evidence. He was not my close friend, but it just bothers me that they came up with such nonsense and everyone bought it. Typical. I saw so much garbage that this is just really not a big thing. Then I looked up the sister, Nita-Lyn Roth, died Thursday at her home. She was 37. That was 2002 that he died. This is from August 16th, 2002, and this is 2004. Mrs. Roth was born in Waukon, Iowa, and moved to this area from Fort Lauderdale. She worked in administration for a construction company. She was a graduate of the University of South Florida and Florida International University. She was Jewish. They had to mention that because was he Jewish too? I don't know. Survivors include her mother, same last name, same person. Her grandma. Oh, so the father is gone by now? Did the father also die? I didn't look up the father. Now I'm curious to look up his patents and look up his publications and see how much of it was used to make money for people like Elon Musk or such. I don't know. Was it? I don't know. Now you may say that was a curiosity that can't be and so forth. So I'm going to tell you another story. Back at Caltech, I would go to the gym a lot, and there was this tall blonde guy that we had befriended each other working out, doing strength training and weight training and so forth together. And one time, I asked this guy, he would have been probably like, I don't know, 6, 7 inches taller than me, had he been able to stand up because he was always on wheelchair. I asked him finally after a few, so many sessions, I said, hey, I never asked you, do you mind telling me why are you on a wheelchair? And he told me that he suffered from scoliosis, and the scoliosis was getting so bad that it was beginning to push possibly on his organs, his heart, and so forth. It wasn't there yet, but he was getting there, and he was told by his doctors and so forth that he must operate. He said, when I did the operation, when I came to, I realized I was told that basically there was something happened, we don't know what, and he had lost feel and control of everything waist down. And I said, did you follow up? Did you try to figure out what they had done or any transcripts, anything? He said they conveniently later on announced that there was a fire in the hospital and all the records from that day and everything was lost. And this is in America for you. People 30, 40, 50 years ago, they thought, back in the 60s, a lot of people on this planet, they thought by the time the year 2000 rolls around, you're gonna have you're gonna have robots taking care of everything. That we would be in such an advanced state of existence. If people are pushing for Trump, it's really because the expectations were high, and life is ever more miserable now than ever was before. In so many ways, things have improved, but you see a lot of shysterism. You see a lot of people making easy money. You see a lot of people losing, and that sort of lack of confidence in the government, lack of confidence in the way things are working out, makes a lot of people feel like, what the heck? We should have had a much better life now. What is this that we have? And of course, they just want to throw a wrench in the system, so they vote for someone like Donald Trump because they think that is a wrench that the system needs to receive from the public. If you look up the jobs at NASA and so forth, it says it's 80 times more difficult to get into JPL or NASA than to get into Harvard. If I tell you all the stories I have from JPL, it was so ridiculous. It was such BS driven system. And frankly, I was amazed no one, even back then, I was amazed that no one who has experienced this crappy place has not talked about it, opened up their mouth and talked about it. I myself, after I got out, I wanted to make videos or talk. I was like, no, do I have to make trouble for myself? Forget it. Sometimes I feel like I'm a 90-year-old person. I have so many stories to tell. On the same topic as my other friend who had scoliosis and lost had become paralyzed from waist down. In one of our departments at JPL, we had this Turkish engineer who was very good with Lagrangian dynamics. It was his bread and butter. And he would walk around on crutches. He was paralyzed down too. And one time, I finally asked him, I said, do you mind if I ask you why you have, you have no control over your legs? And I thought he's going to tell me some long story about this happened, that happened, this, that, the other. He answered with one word, polio. I said, what? He said, yeah, polio. That's it. And he was my age, and I couldn't help but feel like, oh, because of the Shah in Iran, we were vaccinated against polio. And this poor guy, God knows what part of Turkey he was from, he wasn't vaccinated for polio. He's spending his life, completely numb in both legs. And people like me were saved from the hassle because we had someone caring for us. It's ridiculous. People comparing on Reddit and so forth jobs at Google versus jobs at NASA. In fact, my experience was that the pay was actually higher than other companies, especially back in 2000, 2001, because of the startup uh, bomb, because of the startup takeoff. A lot of engineers were jumping into startups, so they had to compete. In order to get anyone, they had to pay good money. I was offered almost $93,000, I think, $94,000 a year. And that was quite a bit for back then. Anyways, this is a tiny bit of story, and if anyone's interested, I can tell you more about my NASA stories. I have so many ridiculous stories you won't believe. the cuddliest guy that I met at JPL was, I think, this Indian guy who was, I got to really talk to a lot of people up the ladder. I mean, way up. I think this one guy was a division manager. An Indian guy was such a nice, cuddly guy. And it was very clear that he knows. He's like, he didn't want to tell me that this is a shithole, get out. He was like, oh, you need to figure out what you want to do in your life and go get it. If it's not here, you may want to really consider the, the attitude, the whole gesture about, because a lot of them don't want to open their mouth and say anything. Every day, everybody had to run around. There was always threat that our funding is going to be cut off and so forth. And especially if you were a new hire, you were like treated like ants. You were constantly being groomed from one section to another. They were constantly restructuring everything. Every division, every section, every group was getting smashed together and turned this, turned that. Every 2-3 months, a project that they had been working on for years would get canceled. Then the groups would merge with some other group. Then you would get out of that division, go to another division. They were constantly smashing them together in the name of productivity, but it was so pathetic because it was so obvious to make the people up the chain happy. They were constantly restructuring everything. It's as if any change is good change. Just change things around. Change. We're doing something. And you were at the butt end of the joke. You were at the butt end of all the change and all the ridiculous restructuring that they would do. We would always joke that we have PhDs. Our boss had a master's degree. His boss had a bachelor's degree. And we would joke that by the time you follow this chain, the current head of NASA administrator has just a bachelor's degree. That's like a joke. It was all about politics and who has more politics, who can sell himself, who can assert himself, who can bullshit more, who can. Bottom line, they would constantly say, sell. You got to sell to the client. Who's the client? I feel like this is worse than a used car dealership. So often people were selling technologies. In a used car dealership, you don't try to sell a Yugo as a Mercedes-Benz. But here, we were trying to sell constantly. We were told to sell a scooter as a shuttle engine over and over, and it was amazing how stupid people were. We were constantly having guests from Huntsville, Alabama, who wanted help with the shuttle engine, and we were for weeks and months they would come and people in our groups were presenting them with garbage data, garbage data, garbage algorithm that any idiot kid can set up, acting as if it's some kind of massive error detection diagnostic tool. And these engineers from Huntsville, they couldn't figure out on day one. They had not read. All you had to do was like ask for the documentation. What is this algorithm you use? Get the documentation, read through it, and realize it's nothing. Month after month, they would come and go and come and go. Restructure this, restructure that. And we would always joke, yeah, so we would say that if you follow up, the chain of command, after the NASA administration, you have the president usually, back, George W. or someone like that, who's practically not even a high school, he's a high school dropout. And then who's their boss? People who vote for that president. And we would joke that that's just then junior high. So we were a bunch of PhDs working for bachelor's degree people who were working for master's degree people who were working for bachelor's degree. And if you continued, you would get bottom line to 5th grade education, choosing things, deciding where things need to go. Anyways, that's that for today. I hope this was a little bit of a story. I have a lot of stories, and if anyone's interested, let me know. And if you thought this was good, put a like on this video and share it with your friends. Thank you.